And you're teaching a corporate culture at Lab Caves. You're basically saying it's accepted to try new things, to fail. I mean, how do you actually communicate that?
When you treat your employees well, they treat you well and they stay with you. And so my job as their manager is to remove all the barriers and let them do their job.
This is Mobile Groove, this is GamesForum, and this is my opportunity to catch up with Jami Wardman because I am not stalking you, first of all. It's just I really, really like you because you bring a different perspective. I mean, even your talk about how to build teams, but how to really think about teams. It's not just who sits at the table, it's keeping them at the table, keeping them motivated. Tell me a little bit about what you shared and maybe your rule of thumb for getting the right people together to stay together.
Yeah, I guess I'll hold, or you can hold. We find ourselves in a weird time, right? Everyone's kind of afraid of this new platforms or user acquisition spends. Are we going to retargeting? I mean, where are we going to go with all of this? And I think it's really important that the teams who work for you really feel that they are valued and that their contributions are accepted. And because there's so much turnover right now in the industry, a lot of what I focus on is making sure that our teams are feeling like they can try things, because how do we learn new things without being able to try, but not with that fear of I have to hit this KPI or I'm going to be let go. So it's giving them the space to be creative and kind of taking those barriers away and letting them focus on, what do they think the users are going to want to see, and then maybe going a little bit outside of that as well, because how do you find new users if you don't expand a little bit more? So a lot of what I was speaking about was how to really keep your teams feeling like they're secure and they're not going to lose their job if they if something that they try doesn't quite work out the way you want it to.
So that's a great way to pick it up right there. I mean, how do you make it possible that people understand, that fail fast is okay, and it's not going to be a disastrous mistake, because of course you said yourself, turnover is off the charts. So you get more concerned and less experimental.
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time with focusing in on metrics, and that is how we have to decide if something works or not. I mean, you have to eventually say, no, this isn't working and we need to change direction. But also, letting the teams know that it's okay. Like, come talk to me. Are you concerned about something? Is there anything that we can help you with now that will make your job better? And yes, we fail occasionally on things, but if we learn from failure, it's not a real failure. It's really focusing in on what are you learning from that I'm not even going to call it an error, that test, and where do we go from there? And from my team perspective, I mean, we want to hire people who long-term want to be at the company. It's not we want you for 6 months and to let you go. That is not the focus at all. And so I'm wanting the teams to know that they really can play around, and that we really do want to support them in who they are within our company, that we are people-driven as well as data-driven.
Sounds like I'd want to work there. Jami, sounds wonderful. What about the other aspect? You can either see it as augmenting your abilities, or you can see it as competing with your abilities, and that is AI. So in the time between the last time we saw each other, that's come on board a lot. So it's either you have to think of it as part of the team, or encourage the team to consider it part of their routine. How's it working out at Lab Caves?
So we use AI in a variety of ways, and the really important thing is it's not using AI just to use AI. It's an AI with a human approach. So for example, if we use, my art team decides to make a new character in the game, and they decide to use the models within AI, that's not the model that goes in the game. The model that goes in the game is the one that the artist puts their final pieces on, and they can rough the edges out of AI. So we don't have the four-finger problem, and we don't have some of the very clearly this is AI generated. What we're trying to do there is allow the artist to not spend all of their time making like a rock, for example, or needing to iterate on wanting to update a model that maybe is going to take a little bit of time, and they can kind of come up with a lot of different ideas. But I think AI is more complicated than what a lot of people put forward, because also you have to train the models on your own pieces. So in the art aspect, for example, they have to learn how the model is created, and then what do we want to change in that, and what do we want to be clearer, and then have the artist kind of put the last little bits and pieces onto that. What does that look like, and how would our users respond to that? And keeping all of that in mind. And it's a lot, but it's not we put it into the AI and the AI gives us the answer and we move on. I mean, there is an absolute human impact. Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot about that. I've even written about that is where it will be, deciding how to guide, and that will be the best practices. Where do we guide AI? How do we teach it? And you're teaching a corporate culture at Lab Caves. You're basically saying it's accepted to try new things, to fail. I mean, how do you actually communicate that? Is that like a meeting where you're up there and you're saying, look, I've got your back. I'm not going to let you go. It's all good. How do you actually communicate that and make that part of the process? Because, you know, it needs to be something I think that needs to be repeated because it's a different way of seeing things.
Yeah, we try really hard to have one-on-one meetings every month so that you have a chance to talk to your manager and feel like I'm not comfortable with this thing that's happening, or this didn't go the way I wanted to and I don't know where to go from here and I'm worried. And so it's a chance for the manager to say, look, we're not upset with what's happening, but let's work towards this kind of a goal, or no, this cannot continue and here's a way for you to move forward without it. It's not necessarily it's going to impact your job. It means that we need to find a way to make your job work. And so it's not that we're going to keep someone who's continually failing, obviously, but you have to give people space to do their jobs. And I have this real belief that if you're going to take the time to interview somebody and then hire them and bring them on board in your company, you need to really have that investment into the person. And when you treat your employees well, they treat you well and they stay with you. And so really believing in the power of the team that we have. I think I work with some very talented people, and I'm incredibly privileged for that. And so my job as their manager is to remove all the barriers and let them do their job. But from a corporate culture perspective, it's also being that barrier between our parent company and the people who do the everyday work, that they don't need to hear some of the pieces that are in between. I need to report up, and the company needs to tell me what they want, and then I need to get the teams motivated in that direction. But that doesn't mean they need to hear the specifics. It's instead, don't freak out about if they're upset about something. I can handle them being upset about something. Instead, let's focus on how we move ourselves forward within this specific space.
Because from up, you're going to hear the KPIs very clearly, and it's like sometimes you don't need to know everything. It's almost like you would inhibit the creativity and what the experimental sort of approach would be. If it's like you got to do this. No, leave it a little bit more flexible.
And it doesn't mean that the data is not important. The data is absolutely important.
Yeah.
We have to be driven by data, but we can't let it make every decision. We have to again, that's the human aspect that you add to AI. It's the human aspect you add to data. And sometimes I ask my data lead, what does this mean? Because we can interpret this in a lot of different ways.
True.
And just depending on your point of view, you'll interpret the data one way or the other. And I don't want it interpreted through a lens. I need to know what the data is telling me, and then I need to be able to iterate from there.
That's a big one. I hear about that so often because now we're so focused on the data, and you just don't know, is it really statistically significant, and what does 30 to 35% really mean? It's not really a straight, clear, 70-30, then you can make a call. Another point about the data is looking at the data differently, framing it differently. And since everything matters, everything is something you want to be looking at. And because everything matters, you don't want to just look at where your user is in the game or even in competitor games. More and more people are saying, look at beyond the game, because they're in fintech apps, they're in commerce apps. There's a lot of overlap, a lot of very interesting overlap that if you know the patterns and where users are in their journey in other games, then you can engage, re-engage, target, retarget in those apps. Even if it's just branding, to be in front of the users as part of the journey. It's a fascinating tactic. It's something I'm hearing a lot more about that has legs. What's your approach, and what's your thought on this strategy?
We've been researching it a little bit more, but we haven't quite gone there yet. And so I think it's a really interesting strategy, trying to get in front of people and understanding where they are. And also, maybe there's a user motivation that's very clear when you see, a lot of my, like you said, fintech, like a lot of my users are in fintech. Is there something from that they are liking that we could bring into the game that would make it more interesting for them? Because we're already seeing that connection. Can we bring more into the game? So research is always useful, and it's always nice to know where the users are. I think it's the same kind of we're finding games going into more platforms as well. So going to what we would call alternative stores, to be on not on just the main two, but then to go further than that. New platforms, new stores, etc. And it's all kind of in that same space. Where are the users? And then let's make the barrier low. Let's bring the game to where they already are.
Yeah, that's a good point. Bringing the game to them, because asking them to come to you, it's sort of like in social. We used to send people to websites. Now it's like, no, if they engage with it on Instagram or on LinkedIn, happy days, we'll take that. That counts. It's been fascinating chatting with you, Jami. I'm glad I could catch up with you. And we're on for a proper podcast still at some point. Lots to discuss because there's a lot going on in your world. You are a force, Jami. It was a joy.
Thank you, Peggy.
And of course, if you're tuning into In the Groove on YouTube, well, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It will allow you to stay up to date with the series, and not only that, enjoy the pure gold of knowledge and insights our guests bring to every episode.